Hey everybody, Realm Builder Guy here, and welcome back to the channel. A couple of years ago, I did a video discussing what I considered to be the best Paradox game at the time, Imperator Rome. I still maintain that that's more or less true, even though I may be swayed a little bit by some other games that have come out since then, or been expanded since then. But, for me, the big question is, because this channel was really built upon Crusader Kings 3, is whether or not in 2023, 3 years after the release of Crusader Kings 3, is it a great game? Is it a good game? Or is it kind of an average or maybe even bad game? Well, I'll get one thing straight out of the way. It's not a bad game. I would say it's not an average game. Now the question is it good or is it great? And for that, I kind of want to go back and take a look at this 3-year path of Crusader Kings 3. Now, the game was released on September 1st, 2020, to much hype. Of course, this was at a time when a lot of us were at home a lot, and I was really excited for the game. I was a huge fan of CK1 and CK2, so obviously CK3 came out, and I went, this is great. And that's more or less when my channel launched. So, my channel is as old as Crusader Kings 3. It predates it by a couple of weeks, but overall, we can kind of chart it that way. And it was exciting. It was fun. It looked great. The graphics were great. It was a little bland in the sense of, you got into the same loop over and over again. There just wasn't much there, and a lot of people were just used to what CK2 had to offer at the end. Now, that is not fair, because Crusader Kings 2, when it launched, didn't have as much as it did at the end, obviously. But people aren't fair. We can't forget that. People like to dunk on things, and, well, being negative is easier for some people than being positive. Nevertheless, Crusader Kings 3 did lack a lot for a long time. And over these 3 years, we've seen a few additions. First came Northern Lords as a flavor pack in March of 2021, and then we waited almost an entire year before the next major thing came, and that was a big one. That was the Royal Court expansion, and that added so much more depth if you were a king or an emperor. It really didn't add anything to a duke or a count, and not real. It added some things, certain regions and stuff like that got reworked, but overall, the mechanics were for when you were higher up. There wasn't much there at the Duke and Count level. A few months later, at the end of May in 22, Fate of Iberia was brought out, and that was the second flavor pack. Now, the way Paradox and Crusader Kings 3 specifically kind of qualifies things, you've got expansion packs, which are the really big DLCs. These are huge. These are Royal Court and Tours and Tournaments. Things that mechanically change huge aspects of the game. Now, after that, I would say you've got flavor packs. These are about specific regions. They add more depth to certain geographic regions. They add kind of sub-mechanisms, specifically in subsystems for that area to bring out the flavor at the area. And then you have event packs. Event packs are basically things that add more things that happen. Now, things like Royal Court and Tours and Tournaments also added a lot of events, but then there are ones that are specifically geared towards events. So Fate of Iberia added a lot of things about Iberia, the struggle for Iberia and really that unique nature of the history of Iberia when it came to graphics, art, stuff like that. Same that Northern Lords did for Scandinavia, but that still left a lot open. Then in August of 22, we saw Friends and Foes. The first event pack came out that added a lot of new events to the game. And then we waited a long time until May of this year, 2023, when Tours and Tournaments, the next major expansion, came out. And for me, that was a huge one. That added so much more. Royal Court I thought was already good, but Tours and Tournaments was so much better than Royal Court. It added so much more. However, it's still missing a lot of things. Now, Tours and Tournaments, what I really like about it, it gives you more to do as a ruler, even below the level of a king. So now dukes and counts have things they can do They can host events, they can travel to events, they can interact more, even though I would say I'm still left a little flat. I mean, yes, I know, don't get me wrong, in my latest Angevin series, I was able to murder the King of France at his own wedding, which was kind of cool. But overall, I feel like the impact of these events through tours and tournaments, we're looking at hunts in particular and feasts. Below the level of grand weddings, I think doing a grand tour was fun, but it's really only something I would probably do in a full playthrough. I mean, at most, maybe 3 times. I've done it once with the Angevin series that you could check out here on the channel. But other than that, I haven't really done it yet because it's tedious. It takes a lot of time, and the overall impact isn't quite what I was hoping for, to be honest. Tournaments are fun. Hunts and feasts are quick things you can do to kind of get little benefits out of it. And it gives more depth to what was there before. Before, those were really flat and it was just rinse and repeat. This gives you a little bit more different angles you can do, but I'm looking for more impact. Now, there are 2 more things coming out in 2023. In Q3, we've got Wards and Wardens, another event pack, and then a flavor pack that I'm really excited about in Q4 of this year is Legacy of Persia. So focusing on that area of the Euphrates and everything that was the Persian Empire and what impact that has on that region and that world, and I am absolutely excited about that one. So those are all the overall things, kind of the pathway to lead us to where we now find ourselves with Crusader Kings 3. The question now is it average, good, or great? Well, I would say it's above average at minimum. Is it good? Yes, it's a good game. I'm enjoying Crusader Kings 3 now more than I have before. So for me, that shows it's a good game. But it is not a great game. It's definitely not a perfect game. It still has a long way to go. The beauty is CK3, given how popular it is, there is still a lot to come. Now, areas that for me, I'm still struggling with personally. The big one is AI. I know that's a huge issue. That's a huge topic to tackle for a developer because, especially in a game as complex as CK3 with so many moving parts, there's just a lot to deal with. Now, I will say it's better than the AI in some other games. Kind of thinking of Victoria 3 here, but it still is a little bit lackluster, specifically in warfare. The illogic nature of the way that allies tend to work. I wish you could coordinate things better. I think warfare needs more attention. It needs a greater overhaul, that you can micromanage certain things. You can coordinate attacks with your allies, depending on the personality of your leader or personality of your commander, to see what kind of sway you can have over your allies. Now, a disjointed crusade, as frustrating as that is, and as hard as it is to ever guess what the AI is going to do, where they're going to go, what they're going to support, before you know it, you're left out to dry and, around Jerusalem, and your army gets wiped out and the crusade falls apart. Yes, that did happen. It does simulate a little bit the disjointed nature of crusades historically, if we just think about the way, the major crusade with Richard the Lionheart and Philip Augustus of France, how uncoordinated they were at times. And, that's kind of a theme of major military operations, especially in the medieval time period. Now, we even had those things relatively recently where, multinational military operations sometimes don't quite work that well because of lack of communication and egos and people just deciding to do things differently. But it would be great that if at least in a war where you are calling in allies, you could coordinate things a lot better, because there are wars that you lose where you go, I don't get it. Or if you are a junior member in a war and you can see that it is not going to end well, it'd be nice if you could just be like, peace out, I'm gone, we're done here. And you take the hit, maybe you lose your alliance or, a massive opinion drop or something like that. But pulling out and making more decisions rather than just being stuck in a war, those are things that need to be changed. Warfare is something that needs I wouldn't say a complete overhaul in CK3, but it definitely needs more attention. Now, in one previous video, I talked about other things that Crusader Kings 3 needs. In my opinion, two areas that haven't changed. You need more diplomacy options. Now, this isn't a diplomacy game. It is a player character-driven game, but you need to be able to have more ways of getting an alliance rather than just marriage and having kids, because if something happens and all of a sudden you're not producing kids, you can't produce any more kids, you're a little bit stuck and you're just kind of waiting around for something to happen, and there's only so much you can do at that point. So more diplomacy options. I think the economic system needs to be gone into more depth, that you can at least build up trade more, so you can, or encourage it more than you can right now, so you can bring in a little bit extra cash and build things there, because that can also make playing tall even more interesting. So, I mean, those are some of the things, in my opinion, that where CK3 is still really lacking. The biggest issue for me is AI, and that it's still, you're repeating a lot of the same loops. I mean, you don't even have to go in a 300 or 400 year playthrough to see the same things. 50, 80, 100 years timeline, you're going to get repetition often, and that needs to be updated to make it an engaging and interesting thing for you as a player, in my opinion, so you're not just looking for the bonuses and minuses and clicking. That's optimal play. I don't play that way personally. I find it incredibly boring, so I lean more into the roleplay side, and that just kind of falls apart after a while because, well, it doesn't fall apart. It becomes a little bit more annoying because you're just seeing the exact same text box 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a relatively short period of time. So I would encourage more, not just more events, but the events that are there in different flavors. Not just a sentence or two, but a little bit more impact there. So the things that I think Crusader Kings 3 does great, now that tours and tournaments are there, you have depth and breadth that you can play with at every level of rulership, whether you are a count, a duke, a king, a queen, a duchess, a countess, an emperor, an empress. It doesn't matter. Whatever level you're playing, you have interesting choices you can make now beyond just what Royal Court did. You may have argued that maybe adding tours and tournaments first, but, you know, overall, I think the way the system is now, also with artifacts, it adds many unique things. I like that you can also, at lower levels, play around with a lot of staff, essentially. Give your courtiers jobs that are meaningful, that give you more prestige or more piety, and I do like a lot of the mechanics that are introduced. I think it's a good game. I do not think Crusader Kings 3 is a great game yet, but it can be. I mean, adding Legacy of Persia, I think is great. The Wards and Wardens is interesting. What I'm reading about it so far, I like the hostage part of it because that was a major part in the Middle Ages. So that will add some more diplomacy options, even though I still think alliances is something that really should be looked at with more depth. So my verdict right now, if I was going to go on a scale of 1 to 10, with 5 being average, 10 being perfect, I would probably say that Crusader Kings 3, for me, is somewhere in that 7.5 range right now. That's good. It's not great. For me, great kind of starts in that 8.5 to 9 out of 10. So it's not quite there yet. I'm curious to see where they add some more flavor. I would very much encourage them to focus more on Africa, because that's a huge swath that really is underserved and really needs something. The same for Asia. I would hope that, whatever comes in the next chapter after this chapter 2 of Crusader Kings 3, that we get a massive overhaul and an expansion in those areas I talked about. I'll be very curious what happens there, and more flavor packs. I mean, right now we're looking at, we'll have, by the end of this year, we'll have 3 flavor packs. So they're releasing a flavor pack a year, and one in 2021, one in 2022, and then we'll have one in 2023. Event packs in 2022 and 2023, and then expansion packs in 2022 and 2023. In my opinion, focus less on the massive expansions, more flavor packs, even more so than event packs. For me, event packs, they're fine, they're okay, they add something to it, but more flavor packs that we can dive deeper in different regions would be greatly appreciated. So again, in summary, for me, it's a good game, leaning towards very good. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What you think. Is Crusader Kings for you, CK3 specifically, a great game, a good game, average, above average, or is it failing? Which is perfectly fine. I'd really like to know what you think below. And there are a bunch of links down in the description as well. And don't forget to hit like. And if you're new here, think about subscribing. I've got Crusader Kings 3 playthroughs and other videos here on the channel, as well as stuff around tabletop role-playing and just role-playing strategy games in general. So until next time, I'm Realm Builder Guy, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.